In 1519, Hernan Cortez made a decision that would echo through history. Upon landing on the shores of the New World, he faced impossible odds. Outnumbered and surrounded by uncertainty, he gave an audacious order: burn the ships. With no way to retreat, his men had one choice: fight to succeed or die trying. And they did succeed. Cortez's story isn't just about conquest, it's about commitment. It's about making bold decisions, eliminating excuses, and going all in on your vision. Welcome to Burning the Ships, the podcast where we explore what it means to take risks, push boundaries, and refuse to look back. I'm Jason Seward, your host, and each episode we'll share stories, strategies, and insights to help you tackle your challenges head on, overcome obstacles, and make your own history. This is Burning the Ships. Let's get started. Welcome to Burning the Ships Weekly Ramble, and I'm your host, Jason Seward. And today I'm going to talk on the topic of starting a business, but I'm really going to dive deep into five core things that are pretty much consistently necessary to really build a foundation of starting a successful business, right? And these are more mindset nuggets than they are like tactical things when starting a business. So they can really be plugged into any genre of business or any niche, whether, like in our case, it's real estate, but it could be anything, any type of business. These are five things that I feel like everyone should have a good grasp on before they dive into, whether it's starting a business, buying a business, taking over a business, anything like that. And really, a lot of these things can be applied to, W-2 employees and stuff like that are, maybe managing teams within the company they work for, or just managing their own responsibilities for a job that they do. This is inspired by a blog post I recently made. I've been kind of, these blogs that I've been writing, that's more of a structured format. And I kind of had the idea several weeks ago of, why don't I just I'm taking the time to organize thoughts and ideas around specific topics into blog posts. Why don't I also kind of double down on that and make it into a couple weekly ramble episodes? So that's what I'm doing, and that's kind of what inspired this topic from the recent blog post. So if you want to read that post, you can go to our website, and there's a link within the website for blog, and you'll see my actual article on these topics. But I'm gonna dive a little bit deeper on this one. Before I get started, like every episode, I will share with y'all JJ's joke of the week. And I looked at this joke right before we started recording, and it is one that I have heard him say before. I'm not sure if I've shared it as JJ's joke of the week, but I'm going to roll with it because it's the one he gave me. What do you call a fish with no eyes? A fish. And that is JJ's joke of the week. I like that one. I like it particularly because we are getting ready to head out to our family vacation to the Outer Banks of North Carolina, where there are a lot of fish, and we are very excited about that. So has nothing to do with this topic, but I will move on. So the topic today being starting a business. And on this topic, I could go a bunch of different routes. I could talk about, really get into the tactics and strategies with starting a business, and I may do that, kind of specific to our business and things like that down the road. But this particular episode, I'm just going to talk about, and again, it's based off of the recent blog that I wrote, and the title of that blog was The Unsexy Startup Secret: 5 Things That Actually Work. So again, these are going to be mindset nuggets, and I think they're very important consistently across all genres, all niches, things like that, like I mentioned earlier. Now, if you're listening to this podcast, you're probably a podcast listener, and you're probably active on social media where you're seeing a lot of, business owners and gurus, if you want to call them that. But a lot of times you hear them talk about how much money they made in a short amount of time, and I cracked the code on this, or here's the secret to making six figures in 30 days, or this or that, or seven figures, whatever it is. And that is true. Every once in a while, some folks strike gold with an idea and it just takes off, and everything I'm about to say is kind of thrown out the window because they hit the lottery essentially in business. That is more rare than not, obviously. So I'm going to talk about normal circumstances, and you don't hit the lottery, you don't have the next viral idea that all of a sudden loads your bank account up and then you can disappear. That I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about your typical businesses, starting them, building a foundation of a mindset, and the 5 things that I believe are important. So the first one, and I've talked about this one ad nauseum on this podcast, but it shows up in just about every topic that I talk about consistently. And it's because it's such an important piece of everything in life, not just starting a business. So, well, let me preface where this is coming from, because a lot of these principles, these 5 principles, that are all of them that I'm going to talk about, have been critical for Bill and I and starting our 608B funding, the 608B capital funding business. So we've had 608B capital. Everybody hears that now and thinks it's just our lending company, but 608B capital has been around since probably 6 or 7 years now, maybe more than that. But Bill and I started that together while we were still heavy into our corporate careers, and it was just our partnership to buy property in, right? So that entity houses all of our houses, right? So our rental houses, our apartments, things like that, we flip under that entity, 608B Capital LLC. So 608B, and we didn't that was just a typical, we pooled our resources and started buying rental houses, right? And we did that several years ago. Built up and Bill and I, prior to that, were buying our own rental houses and flipping our own houses. But now, with this entity, we merged and scaled our operations together, 608B Capital. So that was when we first partnered there with that title, 608B Capital. It was not necessarily we didn't view it as a startup company. It was more so an investment company where we were investing in real estate as a supplement to our 9-to-5 job, right? So we didn't approach it right out of the gate as this is a business that we're going to put in place a strategy to scale it, build teams and stuff like that. That wasn't the case at all. It evolved to that, to where we ultimately were able to leave our careers and go full time in it. But 608B Capital Funding shares the same name, but it is the lending arm of what we do. And that was truly a business that was started from scratch after we had left our full-time careers, right? So we were able to leave our full-time careers financially through what we had built in the real estate world, through our portfolio and, what we had built through that, flipping houses, things like that. We were able to then have the freedom and flexibility to launch a new business, which is 608B Capital Funding. So the perspective I'm going to share is coming from that, right? That company has been, we were planning it months prior, but we launched it in July of 23. So we are right at 2 years into that. And these are some of the things, again, 5 things that we leaned into and kept at the core of everything we did. And what are the results, right? And I'll kind of dive into some details here, but because of these core principles, we didn't quit, because it was not easy starting off. Most businesses are not. We had a vision. We definitely had a vision. We knew where we wanted to go. But when we launched it, we really didn't have the path laid out to get there. And most businesses don't, right? That's something that to some degree you are, jumping in the fire and figuring it out as you go. And we had that, and the way we mitigated that, and because there's a lot of risk in doing it that way, is we hired a consultant to help us build it. But the biggest one and the last one I'm going to get to in the list, and I know I'm kind of taking a long time to get to the 5 things, but the one that it was most important to us is patience. And that's the last one on the list, and I'll get into that in a minute. But had we not stuck to that core belief that if we're patient, this thing will take off, we may have shut down shop. So, and I'll give you some real like timelines on that. We've been in business 2 years. The first year and a half, it was, I mean, we were gradually growing, but it wasn't at the pace that certainly I thought we would, right? I just had this belief that it would take off. We had all the right tools. We had the right systems, processes, and everything. People were going to throw money at us, and borrowers were going to be beating down our door to get money, right? Didn't happen that way. So the first 18 months, it was very methodical, very outside looking in, it probably looked great, right? We were posting a lot of stuff on social media, and don't get me wrong, it was great. Like, we were raising capital consistently. That was good. But more so me, I had this vision of I was just going to blow it out of the water day one. What I didn't have, and I'm glad that I had Bill as a business partner to always remind me, like, hey man, we're just planting seeds. And I had a lot of mentors telling me the same thing. You're planting seeds, stick to it. Let's keep doing what we know is going to eventually lead to a harvest. So a year and a half of moderate, I'd say slow to moderate, growth and scaling. And then in 6 months, we basically tripled in size. So over the last 6 months, we have tripled the size of our fund. And so what we did in 6 months was on the heels of being patient and really grinding through everything the first 18 months. So I wanted to touch on that before I get into the other 4. And I'm going to end with patience. I'm going to elaborate on that a little bit more. The first one is extreme ownership. Again, y'all have heard me talk about this a lot of times if you've been following the show or anything on social media that we do. And I'm, I've talked so much about it that sometimes I get at a loss of like what new direction I'm going to take it. But there is no new direction. It's pretty clear cut. I'm not going to say the only way, because a lot of people go through and build businesses making a lot of excuses, blaming others and stuff like that. But in my opinion, and I put this in the blog article, blame is the enemy of progress, right? So to make progress, things are going to go bad. Many things will go bad that are out of your control. You couldn't have seen them coming. You couldn't have done anything to influence a different outcome. That literally out of your control. But the superpower is being able to look at those situations and not waste so much time, energy, and effort trying to like blame everything and all the circumstances. Rather, looking at it for what it is. It sucks. It is a challenge. It is a hurdle, and go right into how can I own this? And what I mean by ownership, and I'm going to blow through this pretty quick, but is pure agency over everything. If you have that mindset of, okay, yes, I didn't cause this. No, I could not have stopped this. No, there's nothing in this moment I can do to change this, right? So you go through that real quick, and then you say 2 things. One is, how do I fix it? Let's go. It's a roadblock, it's a hurdle, it's a whatever you want to call it. How do I get around it? How do I get over it? How do I get through it and move forward? So put the blinders on. Don't try to figure out who caused this. Don't try to spend and waste time on, pointing fingers and things like that. Again, it's the enemy of progress. When you're doing that, you're not fixing the problem that's in front of you. So taking full ownership is first just assessing it for what it is. It sucks, and making up your mind that I'm going to move forward. I am going to move forward. It's on me. That's the only thing I have agency over, is what the next step is, right? So, um, the, God, what's the acronym? MINS, most important next step. I've heard that my whole career when I was in my former career, is if you can look at everything with that through that lens, like, what is my MINS, my most important next step? That's extreme ownership. Then part of extreme ownership is kind of, and I've talked about this, it's kind of a military term. I'm not military, but you hear them always talking about after action reports, right? So if something bad happens in your business, while at any point, but especially when you're, a startup, if something bad happens, figure it out, get on to the next thing, get around it, get over it, get whatever it is, and then allocate some time to do an after action report. And what I mean by that is not trying to find out who or what caused it, meaning, because that means nothing, right? Unless you're finding it out to make sure that you chalk it up as a part of experience, and you don't let, or you cut down on the risk of that same mistake happening or that same incident happening again. So I will give it a real example with our business very early on. Okay, so the way we operate at a high level is we have investors invest capital into our fund, right? We pay them a fixed return. Then we take that money, and we've got to pay them that return ongoing. It doesn't start and stop. Like, so it's on us to now get their money into loans. Well, early on, we were trying to build an investor pool. We were trying to build a borrower pool. There was one particular borrower, a really high volume flipper in our market, that we wanted to do business with. So we sought this individual out. We did everything we could to connect with him, and finally got his business, right? So but in doing so, we made some mistakes. We made some errors, okay? Those errors were, we got a little too lenient on how much we lent him compared to the deal we were lending on. We advanced a little bit of money ahead of the work that was being done, which, we don't do that anymore. And we did a couple other things that just were not best practices. It was literally maybe our third loan we made when we started up. So we were still brand new. The deal went south. Long story short, we ended up having to foreclose on it. We ended up selling that property. Everything worked out. But once we realized that we were going to have to foreclose, we did not spend any time in the moment beating ourselves up about it. It was, okay, what's our next step? Okay, let's call the attorney. Let's figure out what this step is. This step, blah, blah, blah. We got through it. We solved that problem. And then Bill and I sat down for about a half a day, really analyzing every step we took in that process, not pointing fingers at the borrower. I mean, at the end of the day, the borrower screwed up and didn't do what he was supposed to do, and therefore we had a mess to clean up. But we were looking at it from the lens of, what did we do to cause this? Well, it was very easy to see what we did, okay? Mark that down. These are things we will never do again moving forward. We will never do them again moving forward. We will never take someone's great experience, but not experience that we have with them, and try and put all of our eggs in that basket just because they have what looks on paper to be good experience flipping houses. We'll never do that again. That experience helps, but we need to do deals with them. We need to see how competent they are, how good of operators they are, how organized they are. So we learned a lot. And in that example, two things happened with extreme ownership. We saw what it was. We didn't waste any time blaming anybody. We didn't have time for that. We had to figure out the next step moving forward so we could foreclose on this house, get it sold, get it off our books. And we did that. And then we learned from the mistakes by assessing it in a sense of, where did we go wrong and what can we fix moving forward and do differently moving forward to make sure it doesn't happen again. So since that time, we've done a couple hundred loans, and it's yet to happen again the way that happened in that case, because we learned from it, right? That's extreme ownership. We took agency over it. The next thing, that's number one, extreme ownership. The next thing that is absolutely necessary is resilience. And I put in the blog that basically I made the analogy of getting your teeth kicked in because it happens a lot, right? And, it like this is metaphorically a full contact sport when you're starting up a business, right? And you're going to get your teeth kicked in, hopefully figuratively. But at times you're going to have some adversity, right? It never fails. So, like we've had deals fall through that we were excited about. We've had investors that were all they had left to do was wire the money in and good chunks of money, and then for whatever reason it just didn't happen. So we got excited, and then we had to deal with the adversity of it not happening the way we thought. We've had all that happen over the last 2 years. Um, but you don't like the way we are calibrated, and the way I think it's very important to be calibrated as a founder of a new company, especially like a startup, or if you're buying a company and trying to change the culture there, is you I firmly believe that you have to choose on a regular basis to do hard things on purpose. And for me and Bill, and this doesn't have to be the case for everybody, but we choose to do hard workouts every day, all day, or not all day, but every day, all year. We don't miss a day. We work out, right? That's hard to do. I very rarely am I excited to go do a workout. I'm recording this at 3 o'clock in the afternoon on a Friday. I intended to do my workout this morning. I didn't do it. I got hung up and busy with stuff. So now I've got to do it this afternoon. I don't want to do it. I want to finish this up, go home, hang out with my family, and just relax. But I'm going to do one more hard thing in the day, and I'm going to choose to do something hard. So I've made that a habit. And what does that have to do with business? Well, in my opinion, it has a lot to do with business, because by choosing to do hard things and face adversity and just normal things like through exercise, or whether it's cold plunges or saunas or going on a run or lifting weights or whatever you choose to do that's hard, by me choosing to do that and Bill choosing to do that, it really calibrates our mind to be able to handle hard things. It builds resilience. That is a scientifically proven thing, that the more you choose to do hard things, the more you work out that resilience muscle, that metaphorical muscle that is resilience, to be able to handle hard things. So when things do come up, when things go south, like that foreclosure I just talked about, or anything else in business, um, we we're going to be able to be conditioned to handle those a little bit differently than folks who aren't doing hard things in their everyday life, right? And maybe folks that don't do hard things in their everyday life, they are conditioned to deal with resilience just through what life has thrown at them, right? That's hard. Sometimes folks don't choose hard. They build resilience through actual life happening. Early in my childhood, through my teenage years, I had a lot of adversity, right, in life that I would not wish on anybody, right? I didn't choose it. It happened. So that certainly builds resistance. But to keep or not resistance, resilience, but to keep building it, I've chosen to continue doing hard things. So resilience, like I said, it's a muscle. You got to train it, or you're going to be hit in the face. You're going to have your teeth kicked in, and you're not going to be able to withstand it. So whether it's natural, it's just happened to you and you've built resilience, or you're curating hard things to build resilience, you better make sure you've got a pretty strong resilient muscle, a resilience muscle that can be prepared to handle adversity when you're starting a business, because it's going to happen. Third thing, focus. I think that focus, and I'm saying this as someone who has struggled with focus my entire life since I was a kid. It's been probably the biggest struggle I've always had. I have learned later in life how to leverage my, call it ADD or whatever it is, into a superpower, because I know that I struggle with focus and organization and all that. But what works for me is forcing focus through time blocking and building constraints around certain tasks and things, responsibilities that I have. But whatever it takes, some people aren't wired the way I am. Some people are. but whatever it takes, if you cannot focus on one, maybe two things, and really get deep into that instead of going so wide. I hear it all the time, but you'd rather go a inch wide and a mile deep than a mile wide and an inch deep, right? Well, my brain is structured as someone that always is trying to cast a big net. And by that, I'm chasing every squirrel, all the cliches you hear about ADD mindsets. Well, I have one. But where I have really honed that in is I know that about myself. That's number one. I've leaned into it in certain areas where I've turned it into a superpower, but I really create these boundaries and constraints around time that force me to focus. Because when my back's against the wall and I have urgency, I produce. I always have, I always will. You give me a timeline, it's got to be done by, I'm going to produce 99% of the time. So when I can play this game where I time block my schedule and I really approach that calendar as get it done come hell or high water in this time period, I'm a powerhouse. And I say that everyone that has heard me over the years, I say that very humbly, but that is where I succeed. So that takes not natural focus. It takes me understanding that I don't have that naturally, and I've got to create these boundaries and structure around it. So focus all day, every day, will beat talent. Now, you combine talent and focus and the ability to find focus with talent, then you've got, the sky's the limit. So when we talk about, again, chasing squirrels, there are so many things I want to chase every day. Every day I have no short of 10 ideas that I want to pursue, right? Sometimes I pursue them. Sometimes I don't pursue them only because I have good people surrounding me that call me off on it, right? If I didn't have a good bubble around me, kind of insulating me from chasing everything, then I would be an absolute nightmare, right? Now, I would strike gold every now and then, but I'd be a net negative when it came to profitability if I chased everything my mind wanted to chase. So I know that about myself. I'm 43 years old. I still can't control it. So what do? I surround myself with partners and people in business and mentors that know that about me. I'm very transparent of how I am, and they keep me in check. I have accountability around it, right? I joke. I got to give a presentation on partnership recently, and I joked about Bill where, 10 o'clock at night, I'll just have an idea or 5 ideas that I just can't get off my mind. And my barometer of whether it's a good idea worth pursuing or not is I just spitball it all in a text to Bill. And Bill's response is either going to be one of three things. One, complete silence. If he doesn't answer me and I don't get answered the next day, that's my sign that Doogie, he calls me Doogie, move on or focus on what we need to focus on. The second outcome could be, okay, that sounds like a good idea. Let's meet next week when we get together and discuss it. So now we got something. He likes it. We can pursue that one thing. Or the most common response I get is a middle finger emoji. And the middle finger emoji is our sign that move on, get it out of your brain, let's move on. I need that. And I'm so thankful that I have Bill for that, but it keeps me focused. So I put this in my blog, and I encourage everybody to go check this out on YouTube. There's a very short clip. Jimmy Iovine, who is a big music producer, he's produced a bunch of stuff with Eminem and 50 Cent, I think U2, he's like one of the biggest names in music. He has a video where he's talking about focus, right? And in that, he makes the analogy of horses wearing blinders, right? So if you've ever been to a horse race or watched the Kentucky Derby or something like that on TV, they wear these blinders, and they wear them for a reason so that they can head down, focus on their race. The one thing that they are responsible for is head down, focusing on their race. If they did not have blinders, then everything to the side, all these other horses and distractions would cause them to lose focus of what their race is, and then they fall, and then every other horse around them falls, right? So they wear blinders. So his point was work with blinders. And now you got to be aware of your surroundings to some degree, but us, like right now, it's our lending fund, and that is it. So I am working with blinders. Occasionally my blinders come off and I need Bill to put them back on for me, but that's the mindset. And I love that analogy. I love that video. I encourage you to go check it out because, like I said, it's about a 30-second video, but it's a good one. And so the next thing I've covered, just covered focus, covered resilience, covered extreme ownership. Going to number 4, and this one is more about managing ego, right? So, and this is important because folks that have the confidence to start a business and really start a business from scratch or jump from one thing to the next and try to build that, they got to have this level of confidence that sometimes can be ego driven in a lot of ways. Everybody's got an ego. To say, oh, I have no ego, no. Everybody has some sort of an ego, but it needs to be managed, right? I have an ego. I've got to manage that ego. I do not know everything. I need to lean on people that do know a lot more than I do to learn and continue to learn. And I'll do that for my entire life. It's called humility, and understanding that. And like I put in the blog article, humility is a growth hack, right? If I can stay humble and not let my confidence and arrogance say, oh, I know better than this person, right? Do I know better than Kelly Garrett when it comes to the lending space? Abso-freaking-lutely not. She knows 100 times more than me. She has built a mega company like we are trying to build. So why would I question any advice she gives me? No, I swallow my pride, I swallow my ego, and I say, Kelly, show me the way, and I'm going to follow. I don't buck anything she says. If I don't understand it, I ask her. And I use Kelly as an example because she's probably one of my biggest mentors from a strategy standpoint. Also a great friend. But so I've had to accept over the years that again, I don't know everything, and I still don't. But once I fully accepted that and accepted the need for mentorship, I think I've mentioned it before. I didn't pay for mentorship or coaching or anything like that until I'm 43 now, probably 3-4 years ago. It's the first time I ever paid my own money for stuff like this. And once I did that, swallowed my pride, let go of the ego, things started changing. So I've started becoming a better listener, which being a better listener and a better student also made me a better mentor to other people and a better articulator of ideas and thoughts and stuff like that. So that is huge. If you're trying to build a business, you got to let the ego go and you got to lean on people that know what the hell they're doing. Because if you'll do that, they'll lead you in the right direction. The last thing, and I alluded to it earlier, is patience, right? So I've talked a little bit about it, but the big idea around this is you want to be patient long term, right? Meaning patience in the outcome. The outcome for us with 608B Capital, we're going to grow it. We're going to continue to grow it. We're young. We've got energy. We're going to blow this thing up. That's the goal. But that is down the road, right? We don't know where that goes. But and we're patient. And I mentioned earlier, I wasn't at first. I was not patient. We've blown this thing up in 2 years, but it really has happened in the last 6 months. So we had to get through a year and a half of really not a lot of good stuff happening, but just trusting that it would if we keep doing the right things. So that's patience. As a starter or founder or business owner of any type, you've got to have patience. If you do not, on the front end, have patience, then you're going to succumb to the disappointment of things not moving fast. Again, sometimes people, find lightning in a bottle and it just blows up. That is rare. And if you plan Like if your business plan is this thing's going to be a success overnight, good luck. You're just going to face disappointment. You're going to make it 6 months. You're going to shut the doors. If we had done that, we would have shut the doors a year in. Instead, we stayed persistent. We trusted our mentors and everybody that was telling us that these things would grow. And sure enough, they have. So patience. So in summary, and kind of like my final thoughts around everything. Whether you're building a business, whether you're trying to apply this to your marriage, your parenting, your health, your legacy, whatever you want to apply it to, there's 5 things I think that are core to anybody. And it's as far as setting yourself up with a good foundation to move forward from there. Extreme ownership, so take ownership, build resilience, focus like your damn future depends on it, because it does. Ditch the ego, play the long game with patience. So patience, let me clarify this, in the long run. In the short term, you work your butt off with like crazy impatience. So everything is urgent, right? Work that way in the short term, but be patient in the results. And that's all I got to say about that. So this is the foundation that we built 608B Capital Funding on, everything I've talked about. Now, I could get into strategy and tactics and all that stuff around all that stuff, but this is our foundation. It's 5 pillars, right, that have helped us build where we're at and where we're going to. So if you make these your non-negotiables, like in my opinion, you cannot lose, right? If you own everything, you have resilience, you swallow the ego and the pride and let people help you, you are patient, and you have good focus, or surround yourself with people that can hold you accountable to focus, you got it. Like there's nothing's going to get in your way. A lot of other like micro foundational things I could hit on, but these 5 are very important to me, very important to Bill, very important to our company, our family, our lifestyle and everything. So with that, I hope you guys have enjoyed it. I hope that has provided somebody with some good insight and some value out there. And I appreciate you hanging out with me for another Burning the Ships weekly ramble, and we will talk to y'all next time. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Burning the Ships. I want to give a special thanks to our sponsor, 608B Capital, helping real estate investors secure fast, reliable funding to fuel their boldest moves. If you're ready to take your investing to the next level, visit 608bcapital.com to learn more. If you found value in today's episode, please take a moment to rate and review the podcast. Your feedback not only helps us improve, but it also helps us reach more people who are ready to burn the ships and commit fully to their goals. And don't forget to share the episode with someone who needs that extra push to take bold action. I'll leave you with this. Burning the ships isn't just about removing the option to retreat. It's about unlocking the courage to charge forward. No matter the odds, the past is behind you and the future is yours to conquer. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you next time on Burning the Ships.